Welcome back, everyone. Got another episode of the Even Your Dynasty show. I've got Ricky joining me today. It's good. And
how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going. It's Monday, So we're coming off a big series win against LA. Big homestand as a whole, kind of. I don't want to say it saves their season because they're still 40 and 43 or 41 and 44 or whatever their record is now, but the season could have gone south real fast there in that homestand. So,
yeah, especially with this next stretch of games coming up versus Atlanta and then Cleveland right after that. Two playoff teams. It's gonna be real tough, but they're gonna have to pull through here on the road. They've been pretty solid. They've been pretty solid at home so far. Not too bad against some of the tougher teams, but it seems like every time they get on the road, hit a little bit of a bump there with both injuries and just struggling to hit. So,
yeah, it's crazy. They went 5-2, and it almost felt disappointing that they didn't at least go 6-1. That the game they lost to LA, they really just had no business losing that game. That was, I've said in the past, good teams find ways to win and bad teams find a way to lose. And well, until the Giants, until the record says otherwise, that's what it is. But Ricky's not in a cave, Dan. Fire was invented, thousands of years ago. If you want to try and lighten it up in there.
Yeah, we got to get that worked out, Dan. I don't know what's going on with all that darkness.
Oh God. So Ricky's joining me today because, like myself, this is a guy that likes to consume a lot of minor league ball, from what I've heard, at least.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to defer to him on a lot of stuff. He's probably, I think he knows a lot more than I do when it comes to, especially kind of the under the radar guys. So yeah, no pressure, man. I'm just talking you up right now. So, but yeah, he knows his stuff. It's awesome to have him on here. We're going to do our best with the highlights. I'm going to try and add him in as we go, similar to the videos, but it's going to, with the live show, I wasn't really sure how that was going to work out, but I think we've got a solution that's going to work. Ricky's the minor league expert. Exactly. So we did have a shuffle. Before we went live today, MLB did release their new top. I think they redid the top 30 as well for teams, or did they only do the top 100?
I have not seen that new update yet, but I will start digging into that because that's actually something I wanted to bring up with you. Just looking at the top 30, and I just kind of feel like it was a little out of date. There's a lot of guys, honestly, I don't really agree with being on there personally. And a lot of guys that we're starting to see have bounce backs this year that I think should work their way back up in there. Like I believe Bednar, I don't think he was on the top 30 to start the season. I think they pushed him out with his injury concerns and his performance the last couple of years, but I think he's definitely somebody deserving of getting back in there for sure with, the pitch mix he comes with. So
yeah, his stuff is nasty. And I did get a little bit of Bednar highlights in here. So everyone's going to get to see a little bit of some his slider in particular. Whew. So it does look like they did the top 30 from what I can see. I'm going to share this with everyone and see kind of some changes on this. I haven't looked to see if Von Brown is somehow still on that list, but there's no way he should be.
Absolutely not.
All right, everyone. So we're all seeing this for the first time too. They did update. Is it showing right now? Yeah. Okay. So Carson Whisenhunt, I'm actually a little surprised he actually climbed in the rankings by 15 to 20 spots. Now, in fairness to Carson Whisenhunt, if you look at his home road splits right now, they're pretty insane. And Sacramento is probably as pitcher friendly as you're going to get in the PCL, and it's still kind of at best a neutral park. So he has a sub-3 ERA there, and I don't even know exactly what the road one is, but it's like 8. now, maybe worse because he just got lit up in Las Vegas a couple outings. Yeah, he is still up there. Bryce Eldridge, he was, I think, number 71 on the top 100. Marco Luciano dropped all the way down to 76. He's now their number 3 prospect. Hayden Birdsong also climbed into the top 100. I'm going to pat myself on the back on that one. I said he would be in the top 100 on the shuffle. And there he is at number 99. And then Walker Martin, Rainer Arias. They just dropped down a couple spots. Not a lot of movement in here. It looks like Black, Crawford, Ahuna, Whitman, Root McDonald. Yeah, they didn't really move. Yeah, they didn't move really anything bottom half. So it looks like it really was just the top. They just did the top 100 and it shuffled the list of it. Okay, so I see what Dan's saying there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well. So,
yeah, I mean, if you want, we can kind of dig into where we think some of these guys should be slotted, and then kind of some names that maybe people haven't heard of that probably should get added in there in favor of some guys like Vaughn Brown. I mean, Maui Ahuna, I know he was a pretty highly regarded guy coming out of college, especially for his glove, but he's definitely somebody that hasn't really done much with the bat so far, and I don't think he should really be in there as of right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely on that list, guys that are in the top 30, I'll just say it that way. Guys that are in the top 30 that either need to just be moved down or off the list entirely. Like Vaughn Brown, I know why people like him. I mean, the tools, he's got a pretty great power speed combination, but he can't make contact. I mean, he's 26 years old in Double A, and he's got like a 48.5% strikeout rate. That's ridiculous. I would say Kaiwei Tang, who's not done anything this season. I feel like every time I get on this update every week, I'm bagging on the guy. But I mean, it took him until last week to have an outing that he didn't give up multiple runs in for the first time. So it was kind of rough. You touched on Ahuna, hasn't really done anything with the bat yet. It is his first year, so I mean he's got time. He's a guy that should be on the list. Just probably move down. Guy like Arteaga probably should move down. Unfortunately, it's injury related for him, but I mean those are the ones I got on the top of my head. I'd have to dig a little harder. I don't know if you have any others you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking up and down the list. Honestly, I mean, you hit most of them. Meckler, I mean, he did really good last year. I'd probably have him in the 20s. I know spring training can't really be held against him, but I mean, I think you pair last year what he did in the big leagues and then this year in spring defensively, he's, I mean, in my opinion, almost unplayable out in the outfield. His contact rate is great. He can hit it to all fields. He has the speed to play defense. I don't know if it's something with contacts or glasses he's wearing. I'm not really sure. But that paired with him being hurt all year, I think he could go a little bit lower. Dabovich, I'm not really sure why he's so high up there. He really fell off the last couple of years.
He's been hurt too. He pitched the first week, and I think he's been out since then.
Yeah, and I believe we called him up for a brief minute last year, late in the season, correct? I think he made an appearance or so.
No, he only in SAC. From what I'm seeing on the page here.
He was one of those guys. I thought he was gonna rise through the system real quick based off how he started and having a pretty good track record. I believe at ASU. He was somebody I was excited about. I thought he had 8th or 9th inning potential for sure, and then he's kind of just stagnated a little bit. So yeah, those are a couple guys.
Sugastay is the other one I'm going to throw out there.
We kind of touched on him earlier. Yeah, he's one of those guys, kind of like a, I don't know, Diego Rincones type of guy where it just seems like he's not really going to get anywhere. A lot of these guys are kind of hitting walls at Double A, and you can only play glove first guys so often. We already have a guy like that in Casale, and so
Yeah, I think that's best case for Sugaste is going to be kind of a backup glove first guy, kind of like you meant. He's not going to hit much. He's solid behind the plate like that. That's the one thing I get.
For
The guy
sure.
he is really solid back there, but he can't hit. But I mean, a lot of guys can't hit in the Eastern League. So yeah, maybe he ends up in sack next season and he hits 280, and then we might think he can.
That's probably like a best case scenario for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a couple guys that I think deserve to move up. I mean, let me know if you have any, or if you want to take over on this one, you can, and I'll fill in.
You can go ahead and start it off, and then I'll plug in some guys I have listed because I think we might have some different guys on this one.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's two guys in particular that stand out on the list that I think absolutely deserve to move up, and that's Jairo Pomares. Dropped all the way to 26. That was mainly due to injuries last season. He's got a nearly 800 OPS in the Eastern League with 9 home runs now. I think he was hitting 240 something. He got it up over 250 for like a day, and then his average dropped down a little bit. But a little bit of swing and miss, but he probably has the second best power in the system. Or maybe third. It depends on how people look at Luciano. As far as game power, though, Pomares has shown more. And then the other one's Jonah Cox. When the Giants managed to trade Ross Stripling and they got a guy back, I think most of us were like, okay, it's going to be some no-name prospect that doesn't really do anything. Jonah Cox has been really impressive this season. San Jose, he absolutely dominated. And he's up in Eugene, and he's playing really solid right now so far in Eugene, hitting 313 again. He was hitting almost 297 in San Jose, it looks like, and has 43 stolen bases between the two levels. The guy can move. So those are the two. I'm going to let you take over from there because, I mean, I see a few that I could see making a case for, but I think those are the two that just really stand out. Oh, I'm going to throw Carson Ragsdale in there too. He's a little bit older for prospects. Yeah, he's
a little older, but he was one of the names I was going to bring up. Being at 29, his strikeout numbers are great. I think he's got a ton of potential. I believe he was a high draft pick for the Phillies, and his strikeout numbers are really good. He just debuted with Sacramento. He's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. I mean, honestly, he's somebody you could eventually see just come up a little bit quicker and just make an appearance or two in the pen, if they continue to have injuries at the big league level. Another guy I'd like to see that I just came across that I'd like to see a little bit lower or out of the top 30 is Cole Foster. Not trying to go too much on last year's draft class, but he did really good when he got drafted last year and came up and played in San Jose. He showed some power, but he's really struggled so far. I believe he's only got 3 homers down in San Jose, and this is a guy you want to see doing a little bit more at that level, given his experience and his age. He's definitely somebody you would have liked to see in Eugene with Eldridge already, in my opinion. Like I said, I'd like to see Bednar somewhere in that top 30. I would say, honestly, given his injuries and lack of performance, given his draft status, I'd say, honestly, the high 20s would be fine. I'd be fine with that, or even, down in the 28 to 30 range. I mean, we got guys who barely got signed internationally, like Sanchez, the young catcher. I'd like to see a little bit more out of him because, honestly, if he's in there, I'd probably like to see Diaz, who's down in San Jose right now. I'd like to see him in there. I mean, we've talked a lot about him off the channel, so those are a couple guys I like to see for sure. Ragsdale and then Diaz.
Yeah. And heck, there's another guy that is making a case to at least be in like the 28 to 30 range with his play this season, and that's Hunter Bishop.
For sure.
He's not going to be a top guy anymore. He's kind of aged out of the ability to be, a top 5 guy, but with all the injuries, I mean, if you just go off experience, he's really young in that aspect because of all the injuries and then COVID and all that stuff. So he's kind of played his way back into the fold a little bit. But yeah, I think Diaz was the guy that I was thinking of while you were talking, and then you brought him up. I was like, yeah, we got that
the
one.
same thing with me on Ragsdale. I was right away. For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, one other guy I actually just thought about. I'll give you one more and then we'll move on.
Go for it.
I'd honestly throw in Quinn McDaniel. I believe he was in last year's class as well. He's up in Eugene. And I look at a guy like Diego Velasquez. I know we've talked about him a few times over on Bleacher Report, but he's somebody I'd like to see up in there too, because I honestly think at this point he's kind of outperforming Velasquez a little bit. Velasquez had a great year last year, but I know he just got hurt, sounds like, down in Eugene.
Yeah.
But
I don't know how serious it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
I turned on the game. I turned on the game just in time to see one pitch and a ball hit his foot, and then he's just like writhing in pain on the ground. And that's when I messaged you guys. I was like, he might have just broke his ankle because like he couldn't get up. They had the trainers out there, and then O'Neill Perez, he got up, and O'Neill Perez was like walking him back to the dugout, and he couldn't put any weight on his ankle. And I mean, he has the shin guard, when he hits, and I couldn't, minor leagues, you don't get the good replays where they're like, let's put this in slow-mo and, let's see exactly what bone it hit. But I mean, I couldn't tell if it hit his foot, ankle, what, but it did not look good. The fact that he couldn't finish the at-bat like guys usually do, and he just immediately got pinch hit for, and he went back he might have broken something, which sucks because he's been really solid in Eugene. I think he's one of the more underrated prospects. McDaniel's certainly outperforming him a little bit in some regards, especially power. McDaniel's got kind of a little more. He's a little more. He's got a little bit more tools, I guess you could say. He's got a little bit more power, a little more speed. But Velasquez can just flat rake. I mean, he just hits. And I mean, you look at the average right now; it's like in the 270s. But Eugene is a tough place to hit. He uses the whole field, and he kind of went through a little bit of a skid recently. He was hitting over 300 for a good chunk of the season. So it happens to all these guys, but tough to see. I mean, I was like, this is just brutal. Like first inning, and I turned the game on, and just right away, dude goes down. But yeah, so we're gonna run through all the guys. We're gonna go over last week's stuff. We're gonna still do that as we normally do. Then we're gonna hop over to we're doing kind of a keep versus trade type thing. It's kind of probably not be as simplified as that, but because we have, I think, different feelings on players that maybe it's like we don't want to trade them, but willing to. So, which is kind of most of the system, but so I'll start off with the Rivercats. Now, keep in mind, everyone, this is for the dates of June 25th through June 30th. So last Monday to Sunday. We're not going to count any games today. It is an odd week where they are playing on Monday, probably because of the 4th of July holiday. I haven't actually looked at their schedules, but I'm assuming all these guys have the 4th off. So a little bit weird week in that regard. But this, like I said, the prospect numbers have changed. So just live with the old ones. I know he dropped down to number 3, but he was number 1. But Luciano went 2 for 19 last week with a home run, a double, 5 walks, 7 strikeouts. We're going to try this out for everyone. He did hit his second home run of the year. It left the stadium. So for a guy that only has 2 home runs, he's got some pretty unreal power. But still a lot of swing and miss, not a lot of consistency. There's a reason why he's dropping down lists right now, unfortunately. So I don't know. I'll let you can chime in on your thoughts on these guys as we go too.
Yeah, for sure. Luciano is one of those guys. I feel like you and I are just constantly trying to defend this guy, and he's just so streaky. And then it seems like every time he's just starting to get hot, and we can be like, "See, we told you, just wait on this guy." He gets hurt again. It's a hammy, or it's his lower back, or something of that nature. And it's one of those things. When he's hot, he's definitely the best hitter in the system, but it's one of those things we just got to get a little consistency out of this guy. And then it doesn't help when he's adding in defensive concerns as well. I think you and I both know he can be a great defender, but I don't know if it's just a lack of focus or just the jitters being a young guy at the big league level. But I think it was that New York series and then the Pittsburgh series right before that. It was just like, man, it's like you can't really defend that, you know? So I'm really hoping he can just stay healthy and just go on a tear down and sack and then really earn his way up this time. Because a lot of times in the past, he's kind of came up, you know, because of necessity, because of injuries at the big league level. So,
yeah. And I don't want to like give up on the guy. I think he's in a tricky spot because he's on his second option year already because they had to put him on the, they had to protect him last season. So they added him to the 40 before the season. And so now he's on his second option year. So he only has one more. I think I used the comparison in our chat earlier where I kind of feel like a Ramos situation brewing with him, where I think he's going to get most of the year in sack. I really don't see them bringing him up unless a bunch of injuries happen again this season, or unless the season just goes completely down the toilet. But you're going to go into next season, and hopefully at that point he's got 400 or 500 at bats in AAA, and he's going to be on his last option year. And that's where, like, we might end up in a Ramos situation where they're putting him down and everybody's sitting there going, okay, you either got to, or get off the pot. Like, we're going to have to figure this out at some point if he can play or not, because you don't want to end up, you're already trending towards the Ramos situation. You can't end up in the Joey Bart situation where you have no options and spring training and you're sitting there going, well, we signed other people to be on the team and now we're going to trade him for nothing. So he's kind of we're going to talk more about the trade situation with, as it pertains to Luciano, but that's kind of where the team's going right now. And unfortunately he's not forcing the issue, but it's like you and I have said many times, like as soon as he gets hurt, he always goes and strikes out a ton. He comes back from injury and he'll strike out half the time. And it takes him a few weeks to get his timing and everything back. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for the guy, but I'm kind of, making an excuse for the guy. We'll move over to next on the list was Carson Whisenhunt, who's their new number one prospect. He had 2 outings last week. First one he pitched in, 2 innings pitched, 4 earned runs, 5 hits, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts. Second one, 4 innings pitched, 7 earned runs, 8 hits, 2 walks, 4 Ks. Like I said earlier, he got lit up, and it was a rough week. But his splits, home road, pretty crazy. His changeup, still elite. The other stuff, in question. We'll say I'll pass it on to Ricky here. I'll let him give his thoughts. Oh, one last thing. Through 66 pitches, 40 for strikes. The first one, 79, 50 for strikes. I like to give the pitch counts for everyone just so they kind of know how they're stretching out. So. Yeah,
you definitely like to see him get a little bit deeper in a game for 1, 2. You kind of hit the nail on the head as far as his home and road splits. Vegas twice this week, not fun for him. His K numbers, kind of like Blake Snell, always pretty much seem to be up there, but just walk numbers are super high. Between those 2 Vegas starts, he gave up 3 homers, like you said. So I definitely like to see him at some point, maybe in September, or if the injuries continue to pile up, I'd like to see him at the big league level, see him get in a bigger park, hopefully a little bit better defense. I'd still like to see him. I know we've been kind of hard on him this year. And then you got somebody like Birdsong, who we've just been praising nonstop. But the biggest thing with Whisenhunt, I'd like to start seeing him throw a different fastball. His fastball, the velo's there, but I definitely like to see him sink it a little bit more or do something. He's got that, a little bit lower arm slot than some of these other guys. I think he could get a ton of movement off of a 2-seam / sinker. I'd like to see him throw something like that a little bit more. That's definitely something we saw Birdsong do up in San Francisco last week. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. But he's close to being ready. I don't think his Sacramento numbers this year are quite indicative of the guy he is, because he's dominated at pretty much every level up into this point. So that's kind of where I'm at with him.
Yeah, I think a 2-seam would be good. I think a cutter could be really good for him.
Yep.
You see Kyle Harrison use it, and the cutter's been pretty effective for Kyle this season. I mean, Kyle has his own set of things that he needs to improve on. I think mainly his slider is the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. Some kind of breaking ball, but Whisenhunt doesn't have a great breaking ball. But that said, he has a truly elite changeup, and if you can improve your fastball, whether it's cutter, sinker, whatever, adding different movements there to get, ground balls, get people to make bad contact, whatever, something to play off of your changeup. Mm-hmm. You only need the 2 pitches to really be good. Now, he might not be great until he ever gets a breaking ball or something to go with those, but he's not far off. And I do wonder if pitching in the majors, where, believe it or not, everybody, the strike zones are actually bigger in the majors for these guys. Yes, hitters are better, but, we've seen what it's done for Harrison's walk numbers. Now, granted, Harrison will miss the plate by 2 feet sometimes, and it doesn't really matter how big the strike zone is when you're throwing it up at Bryce Harper's head. But, it could improve that a little bit. Pitching there, and pitching in Oracle is going to be way easier to pitch in than Vegas or Albuquerque or Reno or any of those places. So.
Yeah, like I said, 2-seam or sinker could make all the world of a difference, because that plays right off your changeup, and if he throws it well and gets comfortable with that, a lot of guys might be seeing that the same way, and then next thing you know, he's throwing 95 in on a lefty, and then he's dropping that changeup in right after that. That could be a really nasty combo. And, like you said with Harrison, they're both guys that have kind of a funkier arm slot. So, he might get up here, and that might make a huge difference for him and get his confidence back. Going on his breaking ball, I've seen him throw a handful of really nasty curveballs, and I think that might be one of those pitches where he comes up to the big leagues at some point, and Bailey just keeps having him throw it until he gets comfortable with it. Even if he has to struggle for a couple starts, that might be something you see him do. I kind of brought it up in the chat when Birdsong started, and I don't think either of you or either of us thought we'd be seeing him throw so many circle changes. You were expecting a split, and he did throw a couple of those, but it was a ton of circle changes, and that thing was dirty. So I think that might be something we need to see out of Whisenhunt.
Yeah, Birdsong completely went against the scouting report. And you're right. It might be better. It might be a better pitch than they give him credit for. And maybe they just don't, for whatever reason, they do it differently down in the minors where they're calling different things. But I mean, watching Birdsong throw that changeup, I think you, me, and a lot of us were like, okay, we've watched a lot of him pitch. That's not something that he does normally. I mean, his curveball was far and away his best pitch in the minors, and Birdsong only threw a handful of them, it felt like. So now that might set him up for next start, or maybe the next start they're not sitting on that and he throws a bunch of them. So, sometimes they'll go against the scouting report from time to time. But I agree on Whisenhunt 100%. So number 7 prospect, Mason Black. He had his best outing probably since he got called up and then sent down and then called up and then sent down. And this is probably his best outing since prior to getting called up the first time. Went 6 innings, no earned runs, 2 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts through 78 pitches, 51 for strikes.
Yeah, honestly, I was really surprised with, how he looked coming up in his first couple appearances in the big leagues this year, because he was one of those guys, like, just super steady through every level, kind of like how Whisenhunt had been up until this year in Sacramento. But Black's been very good at every level, and he's one of those guys you expect to have pretty good control. That's got kind of away from him in Sacramento this year, not quite on the same level he had been in the past. And he's one of those guys you expect to be one of the most steady in the system as far as that goes. Just come up to the big leagues, throw strikes. He's one of those guys I still personally believe in. He can throw multiple pitches, and I still see him as one of those 4 or 5 starters. Not not anywhere on the level of like Birdsong, Wisenhunt, Harrison. Those guys have way higher ceilings than him, but I still think he's going to be a pretty productive starter. But he might be somebody we could mention as a name that could get shipped out if they do decide to buy at the deadline.
Yeah, I still like Black a lot. He's the one thing I saw in the majors that I hadn't seen really in the minors was he threw his sinker a lot more in sack, like last year and this season. And it's like he got to the majors and he completely abandoned it. Either that or he was just throwing it up at the letters all day. And I mean, you know what they say about guys throwing sinkers. You throw it up, it doesn't do anything. It's just going to get hammered. And I mean, his command was just, it was really just awful. Like, I don't have a nice way to sugarcoat that. It was really bad in the majors. And then he went back down and it was really bad when he first went back down. And it's, as you touched on, it's not something that's been the case with him historically. Normally he has his fastball, he has those two different movements with his slider. And, it's normally that sinker and those sliders are the, kind of the two ways he keeps the ball on the ground. And then he throws a changeup off of that as well. But he usually has a lot of movement going down. And this year, it's like all of a sudden he started pitching up at the letters. And I mean, when you're only throwing 92, 93, sometimes only 91, I mean, these guys are used to seeing 99. I mean, they're going to hit that a mile. So something he needs to work on for sure. But this was an impressive
with Spencer Howard.
Great story. But when you're throwing 94 middle, and then hanging sliders middle, the saying is the bill comes due at some point.
Even a couple of his appearances in the big leagues when we're like, oh, wow, like where did that come from? You and I said it the second he got promoted and came up, we were like, this is not a guy we expected to see. Why are we adding him to the 40 man? Like just didn't see it. The guy lives over the heart of the plate all day long. Even when he's getting swings and misses, I'm like, this is not sustainable. So for sure with Black, but looking at, those highlights you just shared, he has a dirty circle change, and we saw it on one of those strikeouts there to a lefty. That's something he needs to stick with. And like you said, again, same with Wisenhunt. You stick with that sinker, you play that changeup right off of that, you're going to get a ton of swing and misses, tons of weak ground balls. Got to stick with that. And I definitely think that's something that these big league coaches like Price are stressing to these guys. You see it with Hicks, you see it with Webb, you see it with Cobb, tons of ground balls. So that's kind of an expectation at the big league level.
Yeah, especially in that park. Like if you can just get a ton of ground balls, and then occasionally you're going to leave one up, and a guy's going to hit it, and the park will bail you out sometimes. I mean, I'm sure. Was it Bivens was loving it when Freddie Freeman got oracled and hit one off the fence rather than it being 10 rows up like it would have been everywhere else. But it's such a weapon, especially because the Giants have been prioritizing, infield defense, especially this season. So you take advantage of what you got with some of these guys. But we're going to talk on Grand. How do we feel? Okay, did Vogie actually say this? How do you feel about Vogie saying Birdsong is the next Verlander?
That is the first I'm hearing of that, and I love the kid's stuff, but I'm not going that far. I mean, you're talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer.
We're talking about first ballot Hall of Famer, a guy with 250 plus wins in an era that wins basically have been turned into something that don't matter and people don't get a ton of them. A guy that will, his velocity will climb as the game goes. It's like he got stronger as games went, and he'd be throwing 100 in the seventh. It's just, man, Grant, no, I got you. I know you're not saying that he's gonna, but I know that's a stretch. I like the confidence though, Vogie. I mean, stuff wise, it's kind of, the fastball, curveball at least. But
I didn't see where that came from, but honestly, the one thing I could see him referring to maybe is just his mindset and how he carries himself on the mound. And even when you see him in the dugout after he gives up a run, he looks extremely focused, and he looks like one of those guys that's trying to go at guys and attack them. Not one of these guys necessarily like Harrison, who's always kind of cool, calm, and collected. So maybe it's like a mindset thing with him. I'm not really sure because Bogey's been around these guys a lot in the minor leagues, so I'm sure he's seen something we haven't so far. So
yeah, Bogey has been my comparison for Landon Roop. I don't know about mindset. I'm not inside the guy's head or anything like that, but at least stuff wise and the pitch style, Roop just reminds me a ton of Vogelsong. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, hey, I like Birdsong. I've said it for a while now. He's my favorite arm in the system. I think just overall stuff, if he hits his ceiling, I don't like hearing when people say like, oh, mid-rotation starter. I'm like, man, we don't know that. Logan Webb looked like a middle low end of rotation starter when he was first coming up, and now he's maybe not like an ace of aces, but he's like in that second tier of aces. He's really good. So you never know what these guys are going to turn into. So
yeah, for sure.
Next on the list, number 13 prospect Grant McCray had himself a nice week in SAC. Well, actually in Vegas, but playing for SAC. 10 for 29, a home run, 2 triples, 2 doubles, a walk, 6 strikeouts, and a stolen base. Pump some of these up here on the screen. I know you and we had a big talk on Grant McCray, and sure he's got he's got one big hole in his game, and that's the swing and miss. But damn it, if he doesn't have just a lot of talent and a lot of tools, that if he could somehow figure it out, he could be really, really good.
Yeah, we talked about him a lot earlier. Something I mentioned to you was, if this guy makes it up to the big leagues and sticks in the organization and he's up, say, some point mid next year, I think Giants fans are going to fall in love with him. At his best, if Giants fans really like seeing Elliot Ramos, they're going to like this guy a ton. He's got tons and tons of speed. And then you saw in that clip there, the opposite field power is crazy. Even though it's Vegas, it's still crazy. And for a guy his size, he's a little bit taller, but he's a little thinner in build. And he's got really good sneaky power for his size, in my opinion. Like you said, at every level, pretty much. Big swing and miss, but he's one of those guys, when he goes on a tear, he can definitely carry a lineup. I was getting a little bit worried about the swing and miss in Richmond, especially because it is a little bit harder of a level, and he kind of seemed to pick up a little bit of steam before he got promoted to SAC. And then in SAC, he's been very good so far. I've been super excited seeing him get a play in a hitter's park again.
Yeah, I mean, even in Richmond, if you use like WRC Plus, which gives how they're performing relative to the league, the league average. He had a 109, or might have been 107. It might have dropped down a tiny bit right before he got promoted, but it was like 107. So with the swing and miss, with the struggles, he was still 7% better than league average. Which, I mean, he got promoted to SAC. Did he earn the promotion? Probably not. It was kind of similar to Bishop, where they had this mass call-up of, outfielders in San Francisco, which left a big hole in Sacramento, which meant guys got promoted, even if they didn't technically deserve them. But as I've said many times with Bishop, if sometimes you just get the opportunity and you run with it, whether you earned it or not. It's what you do with it. And him and Bishop have both played really well. And my thing with McCray is kind of like you alluded to, he can carry a lineup when he's hot. And, you look at a guy like McCray, and if he were to hit his potential, and by that, I don't even mean turn into some, Hall of Famer type thing or anything like that. But if he were to just get the swing and miss down, get the strikeouts down to 25%, he walks pretty consistently at a 10 to 14% range. Which with his speed that's a weapon in itself. We all praise Lamont Wade Jr. for drawing walks, and it's great, but he doesn't have any speed. So you're up there walking, but you're stuck on first base and you're a station to station guy. Grant McCray, he could walk his way to third base. He's might have lost. I'll just keep talking. Looks like we lost Ricky for a second. But, with Grant McCray, he can, kind of walk his way to third base. If he gets a walk, he might steal 2 bags. This is a guy that had 52 stolen bases last season. I think if he were to hit his potential, you're talking about a guy that he could be a 20 homer, 40 stolen base guy that hits, nearly 60 extra base hits throughout the season. He might be a guy that gives you 30 doubles and 10 triples or something like that. Like he can absolutely move. And in a park like Oracle, it makes no sense that they haven't had more guys like him in that park, like just guys that get flat out burn. And the comment I sent to Ricky the other day earlier today was, if there was one guy in the Giants system that I could like pick out and be like, I want you to be everything you possibly could be, Grant McCray might be that guy, even over guys like Eldridge and some of these other guys. And that's just because you can't teach his level of athleticism. And along with the fact that he has legitimate power to go with it. So that's McCray. I'm going to bump over to Seymour. I'm waiting. I'm guessing his internet probably dropped out or something. So I'll just keep going. I'll keep it moving, and we'll let Ricky pop in when he gets back. Next on the list was their number 17 prospect, Carson Seymour. 5 1/3 innings, no earned runs, 4 hits, a walk, 4 strikeouts, 82 pitches, 53 of them for strikes. Let's see, getting the thing up here. Seymour's been pretty solid down in AAA. Pretty good fastball, has a nice curveball that goes with it. The other part of this highlight many of you are going to see is right here. See how he taps his head? This is the challenge system in effect. Umpire turns around. They're going to pull up the challenge system. It comes up on the big screen. It's the ABS. It takes 15, 20 seconds tops. You see the pitch. Boom. It was a strike. Dude's out. And they get the game rolling. I mean, I not to turn this into me harping on umpires, but unfortunately, until the umpire union is dissolved, we're kind of stuck with, different ways to improve. So, his AirPods dropped out. It's all right. Ricky, he'll be back in here, I'm sure, in a few minutes. All good. So let's get that off the list. Next on the list, 29 prospect Carson Ragsdale. We brought him up earlier. He just made his AAA debut. 4 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 2 hits, 5 walks, 4 strikeouts. He's been really solid this season. He wasn't very efficient in this game, but it's Vegas. It's a tough environment. So we'll kind of see how he does going forward. But he's been pretty solid overall this season. PK asked, talk Reggie Crawford. Reggie is supposedly, here we go.
There we go.
Yeah, it just dropped you off, man. Sorry.
I know.
Reggie Crawford is heading to Arizona to do rehab. He hasn't pitched since June 5th. So that's about all I got. I like his arm. It's pretty impressive, but they're not stretching him out yet to be a starter or anything. He seemed like a guy they were really hoping that could, kind of bolster the pen maybe in August. So.
Yeah, don't even get me started on Reggie Crawford. No, I'm kidding. I've been super happy with his progress so far up until the injury this year, and it's cool to see him in Sacramento. I would like to see him, like you said, stretched out a little bit more, but we're kind of at the point where we need to decide what we're doing with him. Are we going to stretch him out, 3-4 innings once he's healthy, or are we going to throw him into a closer role, I don't really like the draft value of throwing a first-round pick into a closer spot, but at the end of the day, if that's the direction they want to go, I just would like to see them make that decision. It's kind of like what we talk about with Luciano, and are we sticking him at short? Are we wasting his time in Sacramento at short? Are we going to consistently play him at first, second, or third? It's like, let's make a decision there, because at the end of the day, we're wasting time. It's not always going to be easy making these transitions on guys that are used to playing other positions. So That's kind of where I'm at with Reggie. But I mean, his stuff is major league ready for sure. Just needs to get the walks down just a little bit. And honestly, he's somebody you could throw in the 6th or 7th inning in the big leagues just to start him off and see how he does.
Yeah. Treat him like you did Eric Miller, maybe with less openings, less of an opener, but kind of how they've gone with Eric Miller. You kind of could go that route with Reggie,
and they have done that with Reggie. Mm-hmm. They have done that with Reggie already in Eugene last year for sure, and I think they did it a few times in San Jose as well. So
yeah,
kind of hoping we don't go that route, but
starter.
Yeah, quote unquote.
Yeah, he actually would probably be more comfortable in that role than Miller was. You could tell Miller didn't like it early, or at least just wasn't comfortable. So we'll see.
Yeah,
well,
it might be a little
speaking of Hunter Bishop, that's next on our list, Gran. Bishop didn't have a great week, but it's all right. He's been kind of up and down. He goes through some streaks where he's been kind of a game changer, difference maker, and then he goes through some streaks where he swings and misses a lot. He went 4 for 21 last week in Vegas, 2 doubles, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, and 2 stolen bases. I think he's up to 10 between Richmond and Sacramento. I love Matos, I love Ramos, and I'm not by any stretch saying like, hey, I hope these guys take over for those guys at some point. But I like the speed. Like that's the thing with guys like Bishop and McRae. Like I like the speed, and I'm hoping at least one of them can pan out. Would be really nice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been begging for more athleticism at the big league level for quite some time now. I mean, it'd be nice to eventually start booting out the Yazes, the Wilmers, the Slaters, and start getting some of these guys in that are more athletic. I mean, even if you end up throwing Bishop at first base down the road, you still have way more athleticism. And he's a guy you could throw in like a Bellinger type role where you're kind of mixing it up with him. You can throw him in the corners, you can throw him in center, you can throw him at first. And I mean, the speed in the lineup just would make so much bigger of a difference. I mean, the Giants this year are just the king of singles at the big league level with very little power. So I think it's next couple of years we start seeing some of these guys phase out and finally start to see some more of this athleticism.
Wait, you mean singles with no speed it makes it hard to score runs?
Yeah, 4 or 5 singles in a row just to score a couple of runs.
Yeah. Especially when you're running into outs at third, it makes it really easy.
God. Oh, man.
Man. But next guy we're going to talk about, Casey Schmidt, had himself a nice week. He has a nickname. I know there are a few people, they live in my comments. They call him Chasey Schmidt sometimes.
Man.
I mean, he earned it a little bit. But, I'm like, hey, let's keep that same energy for Tyro, who's swinging at everything in the other batter's box. So, Schmidt, he had a good week, 6 for 16, 2 home runs. You're going to see him right here. This hits the second batter's eye, and then another one that also went to center field. The 2 home runs he hit in that game went a combined 872 feet, which is, almost 3 football fields. So, yeah, that's pretty impressive, So, but also had a double, 3 walks for everybody. Just let that one sink in. That might be more impressive than the 2 home runs when it comes to Schmidt. 5 strikeouts and a stolen base. So had himself a nice week. Before that game, his walk rate actually was, before this week, I looked a couple days ago, and I think he actually might have drawn one more walk in there. His walk rate was up right around like 7.9% or 8% range. So, I mean, it's not massive, but it's respectable. And he's definitely, at least the second time he was up, not the first time, he looked just like the guy we saw last year, swinging at everything. You could tell he was pressing. But the second time, he was a lot more disciplined. He was swinging at stuff in the zone. And it looked like what you kind of hope you could get out of the guy. Really good defense, some power. I think I still think he has sneaky 20 homer power, 20 to 25. that probably is about his cap, and he's never going to be a high on base guy. But I mean, I still think I could see a guy that, gives you similar production to what Chapman's given you so far this season. Because Chapman right now is on pace for what, 20 homers?
Yep.
Ish. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've honestly been super impressed with Schmidt so far this year. Honestly, I've liked his at bats a ton more at the big league level as well. I mean, you look at what he's done in SAC combined with at the majors in a really small sample size, of course, 13 bombs, and we're almost at the halfway point, or I think we just hit the halfway point. So I mean, the power's there. I mean, really, honestly, with him, you really can't expect that walk rate to get a ton higher. You're going to have to live with the strikeouts, but he's kind of one of those guys. It's like, honestly, for us, if you can slide him into that Chapman role, and hopefully, unlike Chapman, we're not relying on him to be a cleanup guy, throw him down in the 6 or 7 spots. Ideally that would be perfect for a guy like him. And I think you touched on it already, but leave him in SAC all year. Just let him develop as much as possible and have him come into spring a confident guy. And I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen with Chapman. If he ends up with, 25 bombs and he gets real hot down the stretch, I mean, he very well could end up getting a decent little contract and just end up opting out, which I honestly don't see as a horrible thing for the Giants. I mean, he's been pretty much what you'd expect of him so far this year, but I mean, it could be Schmidt's job to keep there at third base next year, come opening day, if Chapman has a real nice season. So,
well, I mean, here's a question for you. Chapman opts out, and assuming I'm guessing the money's going to end up being similar. If Chapman opts out, I'm even going to take Casey Schmidt, because I know people have a variety of opinions on Casey Schmidt on like what he can be and all that, which is fine. But if Chapman opts out, who would you rather sign next offseason? Matt Chapman or Ha-Seong Kim?
I mean, I'd probably have to go with Ha-Seong Kim, just because of the defense. I still really have no idea what we're going to get out of Luciano. As much as you and I are both pulling for the guy, I think we've got our answer with him at shortstop. I just don't think it's going to end up happening. They may keep him around, and he may be a left fielder or a second baseman for us, but I think with Ha-Seong Kim's connection with Lee, I think they have a very good chance of getting that done if Chapman opts out. I know Melvin and probably Matt Williams are going to fight like hell for Chapman, but I would love that move, honestly, just to fill that void at shortstop, because as of right now, unless they, go and make a move for Bichette, which I don't think is realistically going to happen, that's probably your next best bet at short. So we don't have to watch Ahmed anymore.
It's my favorite.
So we've heard.
Yeah. So everyone's heard. Yeah, Nick Ahmed. That's my favorite baseball player in the world. Yeah, I mean, and the answer, the other part of that is it might just be why not both? They might try and get both of those guys and boot Wisely over to second base and trade Tyro or something. I mean, there's a whole list of things they can do. I know there's going to be the Tyro people that are going to come after me for pushing that, but I prefer the at-bat qualities that Wisely produces, and frankly, it's not much of a downgrade at defensively. As great as Tyro is, Wisely is really damn good defensively, especially at second base. So I'll get off that rant, but Ha-Seong Kim, to me, I like that more as a fit. His ability to both lead off. He's not going to hit for a huge average, but he does, kind of like we talked about McRae, he does walk a ton, so he does get on base at a good clip. He had 38 stolen bases last season. He's, he has 20-30 potential, probably. Maybe if everything goes right in a season, he maybe does 20-40, but he definitely has 20-30 potential. And for a team that has been so starved of speed, give me the guy that can swipe the bags. I'm so tired of this. And he's got defensive versatility. He's a really good defender at second, short, third, any of them. And it's not just like, oh, he's, above average. Like, he's excellent at all three. So I like him.
I'm with you 100%. And I'm right there with you with Wisely. I wasn't super sold on his bat going into the year, and I mean, you kept telling us in Sacramento his at bats were getting better and better. Shows off a little bit of pop, and I've never questioned his defense. His defense at second, even last year, was great. I don't really see any bit of a drop off with Tyro and him. I mean, honestly, there's times where I see him make plays, and I'm like, I don't know that Tyro would make that. Might not get as much power with Wisely, but the at bat quality is way better, and so far he's been way more steady at the plate. So I would like that a lot. His speed with Kim's up the middle and on the bases would be great. And then Kim could almost be our home run leader right now if you're on our team. If you take his numbers in San Diego, I mean, you'll take that at shortstop. We're not getting anything close to that with Ahmed. So
yeah, I'd have to look at it. I think he's at 12 or 13-ish right now, or 11. Maybe he's at 11 with Chapman. I'm not sure. He's like right up there though. Like he definitely would be very close to the league. So
I was just looking at it. He's at 10 right now.
Oh, he's at 10. Okay.
But I mean, his overall number, I mean, the average, like you said, is always going to be lower, but his overall numbers are solid. You know, Giants are not going to find a better replacement at short. So,
yeah. I mean, if you can get a 350 on base out of a guy like that, you don't really care what the average is at the end of the day. Like if he's getting, I care about things like the swing and miss when we're talking about guys that, like Casey Schmidt, that's not going to have a big on base. Like, dude, you got to hit the ball. Like with a guy like him, if the average isn't great, if you're walking a ton and, it's not Lamont where it's like, hey, we get on base. If Lamont was putting up those numbers with zero speed, that'd be a big problem. The fact that he has a 400 or 450 on base or whatever it is right now is like, okay, cool. We'll take that every day of the week. But
yeah,
if his was 350 with zero speed, that's a problem. And if you have the speed, then I can live with a 350 on base and just go swipe 30 bags for me, and we're going to be happy at the end of the year, especially with the defense that he plays. So we're going to kick it over to Richmond. They had a rough week at Somerset, or versus Somerset. They were actually at home. But they have been probably the hardest team to watch this season. It is, if you like offense, don't even bother. It has been a black hole for offense. There are really, I know you said this earlier, there are basically two guys in Richmond right now worth watching offensively. Everyone else is kind of like, over there. But we'll start off with number 19 prospect, Victor Barracoto. He is one of the guys. He went 7 for 22 with a double and 4 strikeouts. He was off to a truly atrocious start in April, and he's been, really, really solid since then. The OPS, the numbers don't jump out at you if you look at his just at the the baseball card numbers, so to speak. He's hitting like 250 with I think around a 650 OPS, but he's recovering his numbers from his bad start. He still produces pretty crazy exit velocities, hits the ball hard. He hit 27 home runs between Northwest League and Eastern League last year, which both are very pitcher friendly. So he has some impressive power, at least.
Yeah, I like Barracoto a lot. He was in a pretty deep funk. I was getting a little worried, and then I remember you kind of were catching on right as he started getting hot, and you were just like, just wait on this guy. So I do remember last year, shortly before he left Eugene, he went on a home run hitting tear, and then you think there's going to be a huge drop off when he gets to Richmond, and I do remember his average dipping a little bit, but he was still hitting bombs like crazy towards the end of last year. It was almost a shame the season had to end when it did, just to see how long of a tear he could go on. And looking at his numbers in June so far, he's got a 330 average, which is way better than what you could ask for, especially in that league. 845 OPS in the month of June, 3 bombs, 14 ribbies. Yeah, I like Barracoto a lot. He's one of, honestly, I think we both agreed, like 2 guys that you really look forward to that are currently in that lineup. Pomaris is pretty much the only other guy in that lineup that you're really looking forward to seeing what he's doing each night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna give a brief thing to Adrian Sugaste. He did not play last week, just so you guys know. No clue what the injury is. It's minors. They don't like to tell you until you get a random, thing. Like with Crawford with the bicep impingement, it took him going to Rickwood and doing an interview with, it might have been Susan Slusser. I don't really remember. They were doing a interview on some of the players getting, the minor league guys getting brought out there, and they mentioned it in like almost a passing comment in there. And it's like, that's how you find out what these guys are dealing with down there.
I never understand it, man. I remember last year wondering, when are we going to see Reggie Crawford again late in the year? Or did he get shut down? Is he hurt? What's going on here? And then I go and look at his Instagram, and he's kayaking in Arizona, and I'm like, what's going on here? Are we just giving him a break at the end of the year after throwing like 20 innings?
Go on a vacation, bro. You got your 20 innings.
Incredible.
Oh, man. But yeah, so now we'll jump over to Pomaris. He went 5 for 19, hit 2 home runs, 5 strikeouts, stolen base. These are impressive because look at where he hits some of especially I think it's the second one on this list. I mean, that one, I hit the facing of that sign above the thing, but he's hit 9 now. And as we talked about earlier, his OPS is up around 800. I think he's been about 20% better than league average so far this season. This is the one. I mean, I hit the batter's eye left of center field. I mean, that's pop. That pop plays in Oracle. Like, I'm just gonna say that. Whether or not he'll be able to hit major league pitching down the road, that's the question. But if you can hit the ball out to left or left center as a left-handed hitter in Oracle, you've got a chance. And that's why I'm so high on Eldridge in particular. But you can't just be pull and right center happy. Like, you got to be able to go. You got to be able to spin on one and go down the line. You also got to be able to hit it, center and left center to be successful there.
Yeah, going back on Pomaris, 9 home runs in 144 at bats this year. Pretty impressive. I honestly wish we could have seen this guy a little bit more at the beginning of the year to see where he'd be at. I think a lot more people would be looking at him. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he was in that signing class with Luciano, Matos, all those guys. So
Canario in that one too. That was
I
huge
believe so. It was
class.
a stacked class. You don't really see that too often, getting 5 pretty damn solid prospects.
Yeah.
I believe there's one other name I'm forgetting from that class too, if I'm not mistaken.
Did you say Matos?
2018. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Those are the ones I remember. I remember like 4 of them, and then I don't remember who else might have been there.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, the only thing I'd like to see out of him is a little less strikeouts, a little bit more walks. Walk numbers are a little bit lower than you'd like. I do think he's somebody we could see get into sack, and they might tweak his swing a little bit. He's got a little Anthony Rizzo to him with the hands real low, kind of doing a little bit too much with his hands. I'm not a
fan of that, but they'll figure it out.
I mean, he might get some of his power doing that, but I do think that's something you could see them just make a slight adjustment to, have him loaded up a little bit earlier, and you might see those strikeout numbers come down a little bit. But yeah, he's definitely somebody I like to keep an eye on. If he can keep his power streak going, he might be somebody we could see in sack at the very end of the year and maybe get some trade value up. But he definitely has the potential to eventually get some kind of a part-time role in the big leagues. I just don't see him getting up there quick enough to really solidify a spot, because Eldridge is going to be right on his tail. So
yeah, it's he might be a guy that's trade bait. He also might be a guy that's kind of like we were talking about earlier. I mean, Ramos is an example at the major league level where got a shot, took it. And you never know when guys are going to get hurt, and you never know when guys are going to get their opportunity. And that might be the path for a guy like Bishop, might be the path for a guy like Pomaris. It might be the path for one of these guys where they may just need that one thing that gets them an opportunity in the majors. And you never know. They may just take it, like Ramos, and get a death grip on it and basically just said, like, hell, you're taking this from me. So you never know. I'd love to see the power. I mean, I love his power. I'd love to see him in the majors, but I think more likely with how many outfielders the Giants currently have right now, it gets a little tricky trying to figure that out. But he's been really good. We'll jump over. We'll speed these up a little bit because we do want to do that thing at the end. So Will Bednar had 2 innings pitched, no earned runs, 1 hit, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. He was a little bit, he was a little all over the place. He does a good job, though, from what I've seen, kind of getting ahead of guys for the most part. But, almost similar to, I see this a lot with Jordan Hicks, where it's like he'll throw a couple just completely uncompetitive pitches that let hitters go. You go from up to even, or even like in a 3-2 count or something. It's just wasting pitches that aren't even really making hitters think or do anything with. So that'll be something that he needs to work on. They're limiting him to 2 innings this year. We'll see if tell me he doesn't look just like his brother. He was way skinnier before. I'm like, this dude's gonna be a closer soon. At this rate, he's just gonna fall.
Yeah.
Which I don't feel as bad on that pick, just because you never know that you don't foresee those kinds of injuries, and it is what it is. I mean, if he can still turn into a highly effective, even if it's a reliever, it's kind of just salvaging it at that point, after all the injuries. So,
yeah, Bednar's a guy I talked to you about a lot before. He's got 4 really nice pitches. I mean, honestly, with him, as we all know, it's just a matter of staying healthy. I think you mentioned it before. He probably is going to end up eventually staying in the pen just to keep him healthy. And, you throw in a guy that has 4 pitches in a closing role and throws at that velo, and he has exactly the mentality that you want in a closer. It's something I think a lot of us kind of have issue with. I'm talking about Camilo Duvall. He kind of seems a little bit too nonchalant. Like, yeah, you want a closer to be calm in stressful situations, but you also want that guy that's kind of got that bulldog mentality and is just like, I'm going to throw my fastball right by you and you're not going to hit it, and we're going to take over this game. And Duvall kind of seems to be kind of a polar opposite, where he's kind of like, you might be able to hit my 99-mile-an-hour fastball, so I'm going to throw a slider. I don't think you can touch my slider. So Bednar could definitely be somebody that takes over that closer role. I kind of told you I would love to still see them try to pursue a starter role just because of how filthy his pitch mix is. Just a lot of talent to throw at a guy only taking on 1 inning. But we'll kind of see. I mean, honestly, anything you could get out of that guy being a first-round pick, kind of take it at this point.
Yeah. I think he's got a better chance than Crawford. Like, it just depends, because his is a back injury. I mean, it's like, which is scary. It's like, that could just completely derail his career. I mean, when he was having the back troubles again in fall league last season, I was like, this guy's done. I mean, he's just never going to be able to get going. And, kudos to him. He's gotten healthy this season, and they're throwing him. And I understand, more than I understand with other guys where the way they baby some of these arms, I understand being careful with Will Bednar. Like, this is a guy that just has not been able to stay on the field for like 2 years. So get the guy right, get him his work. Hopefully they can stretch him out. I will take the guy out of the pen if that's what we end up with at this point, because he could be a closer like his brother. But I hope he can still find a way to become a starter, because, as you said, I mean, his stuff is just gross. It's so good. So we'll jump over to Eugene. 5-1 versus Tri-Cities last week. Bryce Eldridge, I'm putting his combined numbers from last week and in San Jose and in Eugene in this. He went 5 for 15, 2 doubles, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. He actually he was 2 for 3 when I last looked today over in the game. He had the only 2 hits for Eugene, a couple singles. But he's been really impressive so far in Eugene. Not showing the power too much yet. I mean, he hit that ground rule double right there, but I think that'll come with time. But yeah, he doesn't look like he's overwhelmed at that level. And it's kind of like what he did in San Jose last year. I don't know if you remember. He hit like 5 home runs in the Complex League. He brought him to San Jose, and he only hit 1 in 25 games, but he also hit like 295.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. He's a guy that really likes to go the other way. I mean, you look at any of his home run highlights, you very rarely are seeing him yanking one down the line. It's in San Jose, it was a ton of stuff almost down the left field line. It's kind of crazy to see, honestly. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Brandon Belt, how he kind of was early on in his career, and then he kind of went away from that a little bit more. But another thing I really like with Eldridge, especially getting promoted, is just his strikeout to walk ratio. His walks he's walking at a pretty good rate while keeping the strikeouts relatively low. He's another guy that can be a little bit streaky, especially with the power, but overall, you're still seeing a good amount of doubles. I've been super impressed with him. 10 homers on the year, 48 RBIs, and he missed what was it, about 2 to 3 weeks earlier this year?
Yeah,
he was out for a while.
I think it was like almost exactly 3, I think. So
you figure he could have easily hit another 5 in that span, and 15 for him would be great. I mean, this guy's looking like a college hitter, and he's 19 now, I think. So
his body's not even matured yet. Wait till he puts on 20, 30 pounds of muscle, and I mean, he just obliterates baseballs sometimes. I mean, it's insane. And some of his most impressive swings this year haven't even left the yard. I mean, he had a couple balls where they were like 110 plus mile an hour exit velos that just smoked the right field fence. And I remember one of them, the announcer, it was a road announcer, and the guy's like, that ball never got more than 10 feet off the ground, and it hit the fence like 9 feet off the ground. It was like he just hit one like 370 feet on a line. Just never got up. And I mean, he's going to have swing and miss. He's 6'7" or whatever it is. I mean, but for a guy as tall as he is, he covers the inside better than most tall hitters that I've ever seen. And then just his ability to go line to line. I mean, that's why I'm a believer that he's going to be a 40 home run guy in Oracle Park, because he can put it down the line in left field. Like, if you can do that and put one in the Cove, like, you get really tough to pitch to. So just my thoughts on him.
Agree 100%.
Yeah. Number 10 prospect next on the list, Joe Whitman. 3 in 2 games for Eugene. He also had gotten the promotion up to Eugene about a week and a half ago. 4 innings pitched in the first one, 2 earned runs, 5 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts. Second one, he went 5 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, 4 hits, a walk, 2 Ks. Threw 68 pitches, 52 for strikes in the first one, 76 pitches, 46 for strikes in the second. When I've watched him this season, been a little bit of a roller coaster. He seems like he'll have like a couple outings where and it's usually like the command, it's not just like, oh, he got hammered around. It's like he gave up hits, but he also had, 5 walks in a game or something. And then the next outing, you see him throw a 2-hitter, like a 2-hit shutout for 6 innings. And it's been a little bit of that for him. But overall, I mean, I'm really high on him. I know you like his stuff even more than another lefty in our system, maybe even 2.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Whitman. I mean, I saw some highlights of him early on this season and saw his changeup, and I like it a lot, honestly. I believe it. I think it's his sliders grade out better than his changeup even, and his changeup's filthy. Sliders great, obviously. Like you said, really it comes down to command with him, because he's a guy that has big-time strikeout stuff. This week didn't really show it as much. He had 6 and 4 innings in the first one, 2 and 5 innings in the second one. But big thing for me, like you said, only 1 walk in those 2 starts across 9 innings. So you'll take that all day. only 9 hits in 9 innings. If he can just keep that going, he'll have a ton of success in Eugene. He's a guy that we could see rise really quick too, kind of like Birdsong did this year. That's something I think could happen next year with Whitman for sure, and even Wisenhunt when he went on his tear last year. So he's definitely a name I think a lot of Giants fans haven't really talked about a lot, but he was another one of those, typical Farhan pitcher draft picks, third, fourth round. Sorry. He's a guy I like a lot, honestly. He's another guy I think we're going to see in our top prospect list raise up quite a bit. So he's at 10 right now. Honestly, he's a guy that could easily be in the top 5 come beginning of next year if he can finish out strong here in Eugene.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think he's going to climb quick. I think at some point he's a guy that as soon as it clicks with him, you're going to just see him launch up through the system. So number 12 prospect, Trevor McDonald. As many of you know, he's a guy that they protected from the Rule 5. It was kind of a shocker, but you see his stuff, you kind of understand, the why when you see his stuff. I'm going to share this. Sorry, I had to do this a little differently because a couple of them I wasn't able to keep on here. I was limited. But his slider is gross. Like, that thing is – that pitch right there, that second one there, the back foot slider on the lefty. I mean, these guys are just not even close to hitting this ball. Now, that said, command, as it is with a lot of these guys, is a bit of a struggle. This week, he went 4 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 5 hits. He only did walk 1 guy. The command wasn't so bad where he was walking guys. When I watched back his outing, get ahead and then he'd leave a slider up in the zone out over the plate, and it was like, and a guy would put it in left field. And it's just like it was just location on certain pitches. But he did throw 70 pitches. They are trying to stretch him out as a starter. I was a little shocked at that. Kind of had the impression that they were going to probably just use him more out of the pen, but they're letting him try and stretch out, and I'm all for it. Somebody just actually let them stretch out though. Like, I don't want to see these guys all held to 70 pitches. That's the stuff that drives me nuts. It's like either make him a starter or make him a reliever. I don't like this, like making him a bulk guy. That doesn't sit with me. But
it feels like there's just a lot of that, especially in the lower levels. You see all these guys. It's so weird. They don't have a set rotation a lot of times, and especially like Eugene, you see it all the time. San Jose, you get one guy going 2 innings, like the opener. Then you got another guy going 3 or 4 in the middle, kind of like Bivens kind of was before he got called up. You see it with Seth Corey, another former top prospect now. They've been doing that a ton with him since he's been back. It drives me crazy. Eric Silva is another guy, former starter in college. He was a pretty high pick. He struggled as a starter. Now they're moving him into that middle relief role. McDonald's one of those guys we might talk about a little bit later too, because with him being on the 40-man, that might be a guy that, either they need to move up a little bit quicker, get him up to Richmond, or he might be a guy that could see on the move as kind of a filler in with a couple top guys in a trade if they do buy. There was one other guy, I've kind of mentioned him to you a few times, that I wanted to bring up in Eugene, Jack Choate. He's so far been dominant through the minors. He's got a 2.14 ERA, 168 Ks in 139 pro innings. 6'6".
Excuse the camera lefty. Quality here. Sorry, it's not great.
Yeah, he's got a nice pitch mix for sure. And like I told you before, there was word that he got promoted to Richmond earlier in the week, and then when his start was about to come up, we didn't hear anything, and then all of a sudden we find out a couple days after when he should have been starting, he's back in Eugene, had another pretty dominant outing, 5 innings, 2 hits, 0 earned, 2 walks, 7 Ks. So he's been, and they lost that game, but he's been super dominant. He's he's a guy that, man, if you could throw another guy in like that in the back of your rotation, he could eventually be really solid for them or be a trade chip. I mean, he is 23 coming out of college, but he's a guy I want to see in Richmond for sure. Pitcher friendly league, but it's a big jump.
Yeah.
So he's definitely somebody I want to see get challenged a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think did you say Quinn McDaniel in those lists that you were given? A couple of the different people you were saying. Yeah, he had a big week. 8 for 18 with 3 homers, 5 walks, 4 Ks, 4 stolen bases. And apparently he was the one guy I even clipped up the highlights and I forgot to get him to myself to put on here. So I apologize for that, but he did hit 3 homers and at least 2 of them I think were to opposite field. He put him out to right center. So he's got some pop and he's got it to, all fields. So Diego Velasquez, I'll rip through a couple of these guys really quick. 3 other hitters. Eugene actually was like kind of a talent cesspool early in the season, and now it's got quite a few guys. Fun to watch. Number 18 prospect Diego Velasquez, 4 for 15, 2 doubles, 2 walks. I actually did that one. I didn't forget to get. So here's Diego for everyone. O'Neill Perez went 2 for 13, a double, 2 strikeouts, and then Jonah Cox, 5 for 16, 7 walks, 4 strikeouts, and 5 stolen bases. So, and this is kind of the stuff I like with Diego right here. I mean, the fact that he just go the other way. I mean, he put one in the gap to left center, and he puts one right down the left field line. And I've seen him. He has some pop. It's not. It's nothing to write home, but I mean, he's a guy that I think is just super underrated. I think he could be a really good second baseman down the road. So,
yeah, for sure. He's kind of one of those guys you kind of look at like, best case scenario, he could be like, I don't know if you made this comparison in the past, but like a Freddie Sanchez type, not necessarily a swing, but a guy that's going to hit for a pretty good average, probably only going to have a handful of homers, but he's just going to be really solid to all fields, hit a ton of stuff in the gaps, go the other way, add a little bit of speed, pretty solid defense. So honestly, I'm like at the point, if you get something out of either Velasquez or McDaniel, that would be a huge win because both those guys have kind of similar skill sets. Like we said, McDaniel definitely has more power, 8 homers on the year. Pretty good for a guy like him. You don't really expect him to have a huge home run total, especially if he makes it the bigs. He's a guy you probably look at more like around 10 homers, but can have a decent on base percentage, decent average, add a little bit of speed.
They played him in center a little bit this year during the season. Like once a week, they'll throw him out in center field. So,
yeah, both those guys should be pretty versatile. So, I like those 2 a lot down in Eugene. And then you kind of touched on Jonah Cox a little bit. He's been super impressive. I believe he came over in the Stripling trade, correct? From the A's.
Yeah, he was the Stripling one where you're like, we'll take whatever we get, and we got a guy that looks like a player.
Yeah, I'm
hey, credit to Farhan on that. I don't give him credit for a lot, but I'll give him credit on that one. So,
well, that's what I was saying with some of his pitchers he's been drafting like the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds. He's found some really nice talent in my opinion. I'll give him credit on that. Now, if we could find some hitting, even better. But Cox for sure.
Yes. That's the problem.
The craziest number with Cox for me though, 43 bags on the season. It's insane.
It's June, that was July 1st. So he's got 43 stolen bags. He might have 70 in the minors this season.
And he's another guy again, not a ton of power, but he's not gonna strike out too much for what his walk total is, and he's gonna get on base and he's gonna be a huge threat. Even if his hitting doesn't pan out at the big league level, I mean, he's definitely one of those guys like a Fitzgerald. You just want him ready to go off the bench for late game situations. Just have him go, give him the green light.
Graham posts the best stuff on here, man. He gets Dan and I laughing every week. You know what? I have said, because it's hard to know exactly what Pete Patilla does. You just don't. I mean, I've always said you're either the guy that makes the decisions or you're not the guy that makes the decisions. And I mean, he's clearly not the guy making the calls, but look at what the farm system did when Scott Harris was here, where everything was like level to level. Like you'll spend an entire year at a level. Guys like McRae and Brown had those massive years, and they left him to sit in like McRae went like 23 and 46 or something as far as like homers and stolen bases, and he had to sit in San Jose almost the entire season. And Patilla comes up last season, and I remember reading some articles talking about how Patilla was like traveling to the different sites and watching these guys in person. And all of a sudden you start seeing guys get like skyrocketed through the system. Like Birdsong jumps 2 levels. Matos and Bailey, they jump through 2 levels. Schmidt gets called up. But like all of a sudden, all these guys just start going up through the system quick. And I don't think it's the coincidence that it happened the second Patilla showed up, especially with what he was doing. So that I really like Pete Patilla. I know a lot of people want them to just clean house. I would love to see Pete Patilla get a shot, but I get both sides of it. I get if people want to just wash away the stink of this entire front office.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know if you had anything to add to that, but yeah, that's just my thing on Patilla. I like the guy. So
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of right there with you. I'd personally like to see him take over and see what he can do. I do think he has made a difference in the minor leagues. I know a lot of fans that don't dive too much in the minors think our system is really weak, and it's really not. It's just kind of lacks the really top end superstar Bryce Eldridge type talent. But there's a ton of guys that can be contributors at the big league level here in the next year or two, in my opinion. Obviously we've been waiting a long time, but like you're saying, he's aggressively promoting guys. And while they're hot, Barracoto last year was a perfect example of that. Don't leave him down in Eugene just because he's hot and, he's younger. Get him up to Richmond, give him a little bit of challenge while his confidence is up. And then if he struggles, let him write it out. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And they do have a few guys like Walker Martin and Rainer Arias, who we'll talk a little bit about. They're kind of struggling in the complex league that are true high upside players. They just they haven't played or, racked up the experience in the minors to where they could make a push to be on these top 100 lists. And they probably won't until next season. Like, that's the reality. I mean, we're in July and they're still in the complex league. Now there's only about a month left, and we'll see if they move him to San Jose and give him some time there or not. But they do. And supposedly they're going to sign, Joshua Gonzalez, who's possibly the number 1 international prospect. He's at least among the top guys. So, you get a guy like that, and you get, if some of these other guys start panning out, then you may get the top end talent that you need to climb those rankings. But this is deeper than the system's been in a long, long time. There's a lot of good players down the system. So moving over to San Jose, who at one point was one of the most talented teams in their system as far as like the minors goes. We're pretty much down to, I did not get Maui Ahuna's numbers. I realized he jumped in late. But I think he just took an 0 for 4 the one game I saw. But I didn't see if he played any earlier in the week. Cole Foster, 6 for, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, sorry. He did get the one game in San Jose right at the end of the week. Didn't do anything, but he's a college hitter. You expect a little bit more from him, like we mentioned earlier, but he did have a nice week down in the complex league. 342 average, 3 homers, 10 RBIs in just a handful of games. So that's encouraging. Honestly, he's one of those guys just with his glove. You can just get a little bit of power, get that average up a little bit with him. That'd be nice to see because he was really struggling down in San Jose earlier this year. And it's, you want to see a little bit more out of a guy like that, especially after he didn't get any action in last year after getting drafted, like guys like Eldridge and Foster got. So definitely would like to see a little bit more there, but he's a guy they're going to have to get going down in San Jose. maybe you get lucky and he gets hot, and then they get a little aggressive with him and get him up to Eugene at the end of the year when the draft picks start coming through and reporting.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see because with the complex league ending so early, like these guys that get drafted, there's no longer the complex league for them to play in. It's basically like you just go to their Papago site and work there, or you're going to go to San Jose. And if they do go high school guys, they'll probably we won't even see them in pro ball this season.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to move some guys around though. But we only had really 3 guys on the list. We had Cole Foster, who went 6 for 22, 3 doubles, 2 walks, 5 Ks. Josh Bostic, he went 4 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, 6 hits, 2 Ks. And then we'll get the last one, Lisbel Diaz, 6 for 23 with a home run, a double, 6 Ks. He is a guy that's got some pretty impressive pop. I think he's only 18 from Cuba. Maybe he just turned 19. I think he's 18, though.
Yeah, I believe he is 18 still. I mean, I told you when we first kind of started seeing him come up and just raking right off the bat in Arizona, I don't know, he kind of has a little bit of Jeremy Pena to him, in my opinion. He's got a little bit of a funky swing, but I was really surprised on the power. I did not expect that at all. I expected him to be a little bit lower power, higher average type of guy, but I mean, 5 homers in I think it's about 20-something games so far. So, I mean, that's extremely encouraging if you can get something out of an international guy like that. But yeah, 5 homers, 23 RBIs, right around 900 OPS. He's got off to a little bit of a slow start in San Jose, but he does have the 1 homer down there so far. So he's definitely a guy people really need to keep an eye on because these international guys oftentimes get kind of slept on until they get up into, Eugene and Richmond and really starting making noise. So, yeah, he's definitely a guy to keep an eye out for the rest of this year.
Sure. All right, so we're going to jump over to the Complex League. Just going to rip through these guys because we'll get our thing going because we're already at an hour and a half on this thing. So, but number 4 prospect, Walker Martin, 1 for 8, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts. He had a couple strikeouts today in the game I peeked at. Number 5 prospect, Rainer Arias, 2 for 10, a walk, 3 Ks. I mean, these are guys with very little professional ball experience. And, we saw it with Reckley last year. Slow started, or for 2 straight years, where he kind of was slow. And this year he's been pretty good in the Complex League. He was 1 for 5 with a double and a walk and a K last week. But he's been having some pretty good weeks kind of over the last month. And then Wade Meckler is down there currently rehabbing. He is their number 16 prospect, 5 for 14, 5 walks, 5 strikeouts. Clearly is too good for the, Complex League. We might see him in Sacramento soon. He was in San Jose rehabbing. He only played in like 2 games or 1 game there. And then all of a sudden he went back to Arizona, and that was only after he missed like another week. So, not sure what the deal is with him, if it's related to the injury he suffered at the end of spring training, or if it's a separate thing entirely. But we'll see. So,
yeah, Meckler is one of those guys. I'd love to see him get back up to Sacramento and just catch fire and just build his trade value up as much as possible because, man, it would be great if you could get some trade value out of a guy like him, especially with his defense and just the lack of power. He's just not really somebody I envision as being a long-term starter out in the outfield, and his defense, I think it gives us all nightmares. Yeah, I don't know.
Alligator routes.
I love the hit tool, but I don't know. I don't really see it with him, but they might be able to have him be another filler in a trade if he can catch fire at AAA, and be a major league ready hitter at least. So
yeah, I think best case scenario for Wade Meckler is like a 4th or 5th outfielder, and that's only if he fixes his defense, because you can't be a reserve outfielder and like suck defensively. Like, you just can't. So, and I'm not saying that lightly, but he was god awful, and he was god awful in spring too. I mean,
Yep.
every game it seemed like he either would drop a ball, mishandle one that was, like a line drive or whatever, where he like mishandles it when he was trying to get it, which allowed a guy to take another base. His throwing is not good. I mean, he would just take an awful route to a ball and not get to it. I mean, it was just everything. It's not like there's like one thing with him. It's like everything out there defensively. And if he can fix that, though, he would have value as a guy pinch hitting late in games, pinch running late in games. And it's like you mentioned earlier, he has all the tools to be a good defender. He just isn't.
Yeah.
So maybe he figures that out. Maybe he doesn't. As of right now, I'd rather see him get moved for something if we can. He'll be definitely on that list of people. But all right, so we're going to jump over to Grant's thing. You guys can all thank Grant Admiral Shanahan down there. He is the one that wanted this idea. Is kind of a buy. Who would we keep? Who would we be looking to trade? And it's not. I don't think it's that simple. It's not as easy to just be like, I want to keep these 7 guys and then I want to trade everyone else or whatever. But you never know. What it's going to take to get someone. What other teams are going to want. But I think for me, at least personally, there's like the guys I wouldn't trade, the guys I would really not want to trade unless I had to. And I'm definitely not like throwing all of them, like of those guys. And then, kind of the guys that it's like, a lot of them I like, but, I wouldn't care really if we moved them. And then, so I'm going to start with the injured guys because these guys just have no value right now. Like, this is the reality. Vaughn Brown, Arteaga, RJ Davovich, those guys are all hurt. So there's just no value there. And then I'm going to kind of work my way from the top. I just want to tell you guys those are the ones out. And then though I am removing people, at least from my list. I know you'll probably talk about some of the guys that might be on the big league club right now. I'm not talking anybody that's like an established major leaguer. I'm treating this as just kind of prospects. So like Luis Matos, to me, because there's a very high likelihood that he'll end up back in Sacramento, whether we like it or not. It's just the Farhan way. He'll probably be back down there in a week or two when Yaz is healthy-ish. I did put him in the list, but I'm not putting a guy like Brett Wisely, who feels like he's going to stick probably for the rest of the year. I'm not putting a guy like, Elliot Ramos, who looks like who's just got a death grip on a spot. So those guys I don't have in my list. So starting at the top, I have the do not trade under any circumstances. And I mean, I could amend that to be like, if like the Mariners want to give us Julio Rodriguez, sure. But, do not trade. It is a whopping 1 player long list, and that's Bryce Eldridge. I'm not moving that guy. I'm taking my chances on the power. I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect. I'm not saying any of that. But I haven't felt this confident in a guy being just a really, really, really good player in a long time. And this organization has not prioritized power in decades. I'm tired of it. Tired of playing playing the Yankees and Judge and Soto make the park look small. Ohtani, and I get it, these are generational guys, but like Ohtani, Teoscar Hernandez will make Oracle look small. Any of these guys that have legitimate power make Oracle look small. And then we all complain about the park. And it's like, no, the premium power guys don't have a problem. And it's proven time and time again. So, I'm tired of us not prioritizing that. I would not move him, like, period. It's just a deal breaker on almost every trade. Unless it's like a true, you're getting a package for, I don't know, Ellie, and he needs to be the centerpiece. Yeah, okay, fine. Like there's technically players out there, but no, I'm not moving him. So.
Yeah, I think you and I are both on the same page. I think Bryce is really the only guy you can really absolutely say you wouldn't trade whatsoever. I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'd even throw in some big league guys. I mean, as of right now, I think Birdsong just looks way too good. Obviously, it's just one start, but this whole year in the minors, he's a guy you want to hold on to. I'd throw Kyle Harrison in there. And then I'd probably extend that to Matos just because of his contact rate. And I just really believe in his hit tool. I think really it only comes down to a little bit more plate discipline, and I think we're really going to see him take off and be a real high average guy. Again, he's not somebody I think either one of us really want hitting leadoff because the on base percentage just isn't going to be there. I'd rather throw Ramos or Wisely up there at that point. But I think he's a guy. I mean, honestly, I know he's a top prospect, but if you throw him 8-9 and just add that speed element to the bottom of the lineup, I am totally good with that. His power potential is kind of all over the place. He could be a guy you see hit freaking 20 bombs and you're like, where did that come from? Or he could be a guy who ends up just being right around 10, 15 each year. But he's another guy I wouldn't touch. Do you want to just get right into some of the guys we would ship out off the top 30?
Yeah. Well, so I had 3 tiers. I had the won't trade, will trade, maybe. Like, it depends on the player coming back. Like, are we moving for Luis Robert Jr. or are we making a trade, or Kyle Tucker available, or Bo, or, some of these guys? Like, I might be willing to move one of these guys. And kind of to your point, Birdsong, I really like Birdsong. I don't want to move him, but I'm not unwilling. Luis Matos, love the guy, not unwilling. But it's going to have to be for like a certain player. So I've got like those guys. I really like Walker Martin and Rainer Arias. I want to see those guys in pro ball. Like I would, bite my tongue and move them if we had to. If that was the difference between getting, one of these stars back, I'd do it. I added Joe Whitman to my list of guys. Really, the reason I kind of put him in there was I want one of these lefties still. So whether it's him or Whisenhunt, I want one of the lefties still. Yeah. And I'm willing, like with Harrison, Whisenhunt, and Whitman, I'm willing to move even 2 of them at some point if we had to. But I want one of the lefties still. So I like Whitman a lot. So I put him in there. I didn't initially put Grant McCray in this list. Kind of want to move him up in there just because I like the athleticism and the speed, and I don't think you get enough back anyway for him. So I'm kind of at the point of like, I would rather just take my shot on him. Like take the swing. He might just stink and never develop, but I want to take the shot on the guy. So those were kind of my guys that I really want to see get a shot. But if it's the difference between getting a star or not, like I'm not going to be like, nope, they were, in that section. So I don't know if that's kind of how you felt on some of those guys, or if you,
I really don't want them touching Rainer Arias. I have a ton of belief in that guy. I honestly, I think he could be a higher ceiling guy than Luciano personally. I know he's way younger, way less developed at this point, but I definitely think he's kind of on that level. I like his swing a ton. Now Walker Martin, he's probably a guy that I wouldn't want to trade just because of his age, and he's just super unknown at this point. And I think he's got a really high ceiling as well. I mean, I think we saw some of his power in high school, and a lot of us are just super eager to see that guy get some at bats in, and showed a little bit of it off down in the complex, but he's a guy I'd be a little bit more willing to move. Some other guys.
Between those two, he would be my more willing than Arias for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I think I'm right there with you with Whitman. I think I'd rather hold on to him than Whisenhunt personally. Whisenhunt kind of scared me a little bit with that injury at the end of last year. I honestly thought we were going to see him get Tommy John and just be done for a whole year. And I don't
Didn't he have it once already?
Yes, I do believe so. Yeah. And he's one of those guys I have a really bad feeling that's going to be in his near future since he already avoided it. He's a guy I would probably move off of. And again, I feel like we're always kind of being a little negative with him because of some of his road numbers down in SAC, but he's a guy that's really highly thought of around the league. So he's a guy I would definitely include in on a trade over a guy like Whitman. I think Whitman might have a little bit higher ceiling and a little bit more, or will be able to stay a little bit more healthy. So that's where I'm at on those guys. I mean, honestly, one other guy that I'd probably be a little bit more willing to trade as well is honestly Luciano. I don't want to, but he's in that next category, kind of where you're at. If it's involving a guy like Bichette, I'm doing it 100%. I'm not thinking twice about it just because you already know he's ready made. Yeah, he's a little bit older. I think he's got 3 or 4 years on Luciano, but we've already seen some of his potential. And honestly, if you want to go and pay that guy and plug him into short for say 3 years until he kind of plays his way out of that position, I'm all for it. Giants desperately need a proven guy like that you can plug higher up in the lineup, plug that shortstop position, and really just solidify that.
Yeah, I think the big fish on their farm that I'd be willing to move, and I would just bite the bullet and do it if it's what it took to get a big time player back. Definitely agree, Luciano and Whisenhunt, and it's not that I don't like those guys. I really do. I mean, in this entire next list, like most of these players, like these are the guys that if I could try and trade these guys, I'd be totally fine. And Marco Luciano, I love the potential. Now he might not reach it, but I am perfectly fine with writing it out and hoping that he does. And if it doesn't work, so be it. But he still has value. And my biggest thing is I don't trust the Giants' current regime to figure out where to play him.
Exactly.
I just don't. And if that means we trade him, so be it. At least he has value. I mean, that's what the Dodgers do. Like the Dodgers don't always produce great players, but they trade them while they have value and get good players. So Whisenhunt, I think I'm more confident in Whisenhunt being a good player than I am Luciano, but I still think you're gonna have to get room. These prized arms, like you're gonna have to give someone up. And Whisenhunt's the highest rated currently. Doesn't necessarily mean he's the highest viewed around the league. There's probably a lot of teams that like Birdsong more than they like Whisenhunt, but lefty pitching prospects usually carry a lot of value. So Whisenhunt, Crawford, Reggie Crawford, Black, Roop. I mean, those are the group of arms that you'll probably have to give up one or two in a trade. I put Casey Schmidt in here, even though I really, really like Casey Schmidt. I think people forget he was a top 100 prospect last season. So, I mean, this guy isn't like just some bum prospect just because he came up and struggled in the majors. I like him, but it's not a guy that would hold up a trade for me. Meckler, Barracoto, that I like Barracoto's exit velocities, but again, and these guys don't necessarily all have like a ton of value. Pomaris, Cox, like these are probably guys that are like filler pieces.
Fill-ins for sure.
Yeah, I mean they're not the prize of the return, but they're guys that the other team may just be like, I like these two, and you throw them in to get it done. So I mean, and then kind of they're like it's basically everyone else. I like Bednar, I like Bishop, I like Trevor McDonald, I like Carson Ragsdale, Seymour. I like a lot of these guys, but they're not holding up a deal for me. So, I mean, that's kind of where I fall. Like I pretty much the same list as you. McRae isn't holding up a deal for me, but I do kind of like want to avoid if I can. I want the speed like him or Jonah Cox or one of these guys. I want a guy that's going to go steal 40 bags to pan out. I'm tired of it. So.
Yeah, and see the thing where I'm at too. We'll get into that in just a second, but one of my issues is hearing ownership make claims of, it's not too likely we're gonna make some aggressive move and be one of those teams since we're kind of in the middle of that huge group of sub 500, right at 500, third wild card type teams. And I just don't understand it. We're year 6 with Farhan. At some point, let's make that big splash. Everybody wants to give him praise for Snell, Chapman, the big off season. I'm fine with that. He went out and actually spent some money. I have no problem giving him praise for that, but you got to continue to get better. Ultimately, unexpected injuries have happened, and you got to go and make that big move. You can't just sit there in this huge group of sub 500 teams and 2 games back and be hoping to, sneak into that third wild card. I really think you got to, you might need to overpay for a guy like Bichette and hope like hell you can just wow him with the money. Like we mentioned, you've got all these lefty starting pitchers. You do not have room for all these guys. And a lot of these guys are not far away from the big leagues. You've got Harrison, you've got Wisenhunt, you've got, like I mentioned, Choate. He could be a guy next year that emerges, and next thing you know, we're like, oh, we can plug that guy into a number 4 spot in the rotation. And we still have Webb sitting there. I mean, he's probably not going anywhere anytime soon. And you already got Harrison up on top of that. You just do not have room for 5, 6 lefty starting pitchers, all with pretty high ceilings. So, like you said,
if you got 2 more years of Robbie Ray.
Yeah, I mean,
you're gonna have a 4 lefty rotation. Like, what are we gonna do?
Exactly, and that's just not ideal. You do not want to be in a position where you're just stacking a ton of righties up against our lefties all week long. It's kind of like when I remember at a certain point in time, it felt like the Dodgers had all lefties in their lineup, and teams could stack up righties against them and just be like, here you go. It doesn't bode well for you if you're, say, a wild card team and you're in a best 3 out of 5 series, and you've got a team that just matches up super great against you. So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like you almost have to make a big move and say, you know what, screw it, we're getting rid of one of these lefties. And like I said, Wisenhunt might be the guy given his injury history. So
yeah, I think there's certainly risk. It's not like you're not trading a guy that has no upside or anything. I mean, otherwise teams wouldn't want him. But and you may look stupid. I mean, at the end of the day, and that was the one thing I respected out of Sabian, was like he wasn't afraid to look stupid on one of these trades. Like, he looked stupid on like 2 or 3 different trades, and he looked really smart on 3 or 4 other trades. Where I mean, he
a
had
good majority of them.
Yeah. He had the guts to make the big move and just live with the consequences one way or the other, whether it was good or bad. So, and that's what we haven't seen out of Farhan. So that's why I can't say I have confidence that he's going to do it.
Exactly.
But I'd love to see him make one of these big moves. I think the Giants are in a perfect spot where they could buy and sell at this deadline, where you could, move a Michael Conforto to clear a spot for, Matos. Even though I would rather Slater and Yaz both go away and keep Conforto of the group, but like that's the reality, is like Conforto is the one that's on an expiring deal that probably has more value, and if you eat a little bit of the money, but you make a move like that, trade a Nick Ahmed, trade a Tyro Estrada to create another infield spot opening.
Exactly.
You trade Wade, as much as many people probably don't want to hear that. Like, he's probably as valuable as he'll ever be. It wouldn't be a bad thing to do if you can get a good piece back. But then also going out and using some of these big time prospects you have and try and go get a star. So you could try and kind of, try and win now and try and win or build for 2025 and beyond, and set yourself up and get these young guys the experience. Because, if a Luis Matos can establish himself, if Casey Schmidt can establish himself, if, any of these guys, and some will, some won't, maybe all won't, maybe all will, you just never know. But if some of these guys give you the confidence that they're going to be everyday players going into 2025, it's how much better you feel going into next season when you have a mid-20s guy that, like, you're like, oh, how much better are we going to feel going into next season if Matos is established and we can look at our outfield and go, we have Elliot Ramos, Jung-Hoo Lee, and Luis Matos. That's our outfield. Like, we know. Like, it's a game changing. It's so
Exactly. And my biggest issue is I feel like Farhan's kind of playing two different games at the same time. So on one hand, he's bringing in short-term guys who don't have super high ceilings, but they've done enough at the major league level to where they're going to contribute. But at the same time, he's also keeping them around, or he's bringing in new guys of the same kind of tier for too long. And then it gets to the point where you have Matos and it's like, oh, we're not going to bring him up, give him a full-time role because we don't feel like he's ready enough for it, instead of just letting him get run at the major league level and let him play through the struggles. It's like, let's just keep blocking him until there's an injury that comes up. And hopefully he gets up and stays up long enough and gets really hot like Ramos, and then you have no choice. But it's like, you can't do that with everybody. Otherwise, you're going to end up just wasting a ton of young talent,
Yeah.
So.
When guys like Will Clark just thoroughly speak out against that, I think that says it all. It's like there's no player worth their salt other than maybe, well, I said worth their salt, so Gabe Kapler doesn't count. But other than, Gabe Kapler that sat there and goes, that's going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, I think inconsistent at-bats and going up and down is what's best for the guy. It's like, no, there's a reason why Will Clark is like, no, I hate this. Like, let the guy play. Let him work his way out of it. And, his approach has been really solid this time. And he still swings for the fence too much. It's like a part of me dies every time he hits a fly ball to the left fielder. He hit a few out of the yard. Good for him. I want the line drives. When he hit the line drive double yesterday, that was like the most excited I got all week. I was like, it's about time. Just hit a bullet, man. That should be your game.
Exactly.
But it is what it is. Really quick, we'll start touching through some of these. We had a couple come in. Who would the Orioles give us for Doval? Straight up, bottom half of the top 100 prospect. I mean, I have the dream of getting Kobe Mayo back, but he's now number 15. That's just not going to happen straight up for Camilo Doval unless they are just completely desperate. I don't even know if you could get Kierstad back straight up for Doval, which outfield we're deeper in than we are infielders. So, I mean, I still would take him, but I don't know if that's really what I want. But maybe you give up Doval and you give up one of these prospects. And you try and see if you can pry a guy like Mayo back. It's the risk, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah, the only thing that's a little bit tough with lining up a trade with the Orioles is just they're pretty well set throughout, their position players. There's not really they're not really going to go and give up anything for like a Chapman or a Conforto, a Wade. They don't really need any of that. They have way more power at almost every position across the field. Honestly, Cedric Mullins is probably one of the only guys in their lineup who isn't really hitting for a ton of power last time I checked. But I just don't see like them needing anything other than pitching. I think we mentioned it before. You could pair Doval with possibly Tyler Rogers, the better of the two brothers, and that might get you a little haul. I'm familiar with the top guys in the O system, but I don't see us getting any of the top four. They're all high-end top 100 prospects. But, you could maybe get a guy like their number 5, which is Enrique Bradfield. He was a first-round pick last year. He's a college hitter. Yeah, he's a college guy, and he could move through your system real quick. So you never know. They might be willing to part ways with somebody like that, especially if Doval can show us a little bit more. I mean, you see teams all the time desperately trading for legit closers. And as much as we're hard on Doval when he does have these blowups, I mean, he's still one of the best in the game, and guys are going to pay something for that. And like I said, you throw in Tyler Rogers. I mean, we said it. Not good in ninth inning situations, but you throw him in the 7th and 8th, and he's pretty much locked down. He's always pretty much around the 2s and 3s with his ERA. I definitely could see them going and paying a decent penny for those two guys.
Yeah, I mean, Bradfield, he's got legit 80 grade speed, like on the 2080 scale. Like that guy
Yeah,
can
I
fly.
like him a lot. I
Yeah,
mean,
crowded
he's a
outfield potentially, but that's an elite tool that he has.
the
So
Giants are just at the point where just stack some good position players, and that's something maybe
yeah,
we can get into in a future pod. But
yeah,
just
for sure.
how they need to attack the draft this year, get
Yep.
some college hitting in here, and get some guys that are gonna rise through the system fast. We can't be waiting 4 or 5 more years on these high school guys.
No, yeah. I mean, these are the whole. It falls in the category of good problems to have. If you have too much talent, you know, you get to a point where it's almost like what you see with the NFL. But now NFL with the salary cap, it changes things where you do see more of the going with the young guy and then moving a guy for a pick or whatever. Baseball, I feel like it's less frequent, and sometimes it burns teams where they're like, we have this great shortstop, or like we have a really good shortstop, so we're not going to move that guy. We're going to trade the top prospect, and then we end up getting burned. And you get it, the team like the White Sox. I don't even know who they had in place, but they traded a guy like Tatis for James Shields. It was like the ghost of James Shields back then.
Yeah.
So I mean, you get burned in baseball sometimes when you do those moves. But you know. What do we think, Birdsong? We did talk about this earlier, so you can always like go back. We talked a lot more about Birdsong. I'm gonna kind of expand. I'm gonna use this one too. His fastball. It's not. They talk a lot about shape, and I know they're not super high on his shape, but at the end of the day, if you have really good off speed, 98, 99 is 98, 99. So he's still gonna throw it by guys. I just don't think it's going to be a pitch that. I don't think it's going to be like Verlander where he can just sit there and be like, dude, I'm throwing a heater and throw it right by a guy. He's going to have to rely more on his other pitches and use the fastball off of those, just from what I've seen. But throws it by plenty of people.
I honestly, I told you before he came up, I was watching some of his stuff in Richmond, and I personally like the ride on his fastball. I said the ride on his fastball is much better than Whisenhunt's. Whisenhunt's a more of a max velo guy. He's going to give every ounce of his skinny frame to get it by you. And I thought it looked like a pretty effortless 99 personally.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always weird because, then you get a guy like Randy Rodriguez who's throwing, 97 to 100. And he's got that arm slot, and I'm sure he's getting like absurd spin, and it's like guys just can't catch up to it. And Kyle Harrison, he's throwing 93 average fastball, and guys are late all the time on it. I get it. They go into all the spin rates, and I'm sure Birdsongs, when you look at all that stuff, it's not great. But the fact that Hayden Birdsong can throw 4 pitches in any count. He'll throw his fastball, his slider, his curveball, his change in any count. That's what's going to be a weapon. So his fastball doesn't have to have perfect spin rates or perfect shape or perfect whatever, because he's going to get guys off balance where they're sitting on the breaking ball, and he's going to just throw 99 past them or 98 past them. So that's where I think he could be very successful.
Yep, agreed. And like we mentioned earlier, if he keeps commanding that changeup like he did in his debut, we're not going to be worried about his fastball. Believe me, 99 with that circle change, nobody is going to be complaining about that. It's going to get a lot of strikeouts, and he didn't really seem to have much issue at all throwing that changeup for a strike. And if he ends up figuring out his split on top of that, it's going to be dirty.
Thoughts on David Villar? He's playing well. Yeah, great approach, great swings. I like the going to right center a lot. He's top spinned a couple balls that probably would have left the yard otherwise, and hit an impressive home run to center. My thoughts on David Villar is I hope he forces the Giants to get rid of Wilmer Flores. That's what my thoughts on David Villar are. Because I just. I think every time someone tells me about, Flores and how great he's been in the past and everything, I just think of the Jumanji gif. What year is it? and it's he's not been good. Sorry, but yeah, that's my thoughts on VR. I think he's looked really solid. I like it. He has good power. I feel like the lineup's better with him in it right now.
Yeah,
that's what I think about him.
Yeah, I mean, with VR, he's one of those few guys in the lineup. He can absolutely go deep at any point in time. And, we got to remember this team even back to the Bochy days, you never get 2-3 run shots almost ever. And if you got a guy like VR who can just hit that one bomb and maybe he strikes out his 3 other at-bats, that could be absolutely the difference in the game, especially with how many close games they have.
I don't care. I won't call his face stupid. I don't need to. I'm not going to be like Dan. What happened to Luciano's raw power? And he hit 119. His fastest it was average. I mean, it's still there. I mean, you saw the home run he hit earlier that left the stadium. It's just inconsistency, And he's always been super streaky. He's a guy that you'll randomly see hit 6 home runs in like a 2-week stretch. He just hasn't done it this year. I mean, I don't really know. Unfortunately, I hope he gets going. I would love to see them give him the shot to just figure it out. He's hit a few balls that this season that are just, in spring training, and then that one where like you hit the scoreboard in spring training. I mean, it's there. Like he shows it every now and then. He just hasn't played well in games. Like I guess that's the best way to put it. Like his game power just hasn't really shown. So, and maybe he's just a guy that never turns into a big time home run guy, but every now and then runs into one that just goes forever. So
I don't know what it is either, but it almost feels like he's afraid to swing and miss. And it definitely seems like he's really focused on trying to get his on base up and get the walks up. But you just see him just caught looking at tons of breaking balls on the outer edge of the plate. And it's so frustrating because it's coming. It's the scouting report on him. It's don't give him fastballs because he will mash them. And he's got to make that adjustment. That was our biggest gripe with Wisely last year. He was just get absolutely fooled on off-speed stuff. And then now this year you see him make an adjustment on that walk-off homer against, I believe it was Trinan. You see he gets absolutely fooled on a nasty slider in the dirt. Next one, he's totally sitting on it, gets it up a little bit, and mashes. Ultimately, that's the adjustment for Luciano, and that's why, I think Cody and I might be a little bit more ready to trade the guy if it means getting him Bichette, because it's like at the end of the day, you're trading your future shortstop for a future shortstop that is a lot more ready to carry a lineup. Obviously, his numbers haven't been great this year in Toronto, but he's a guy I'll bet on. I'm more than fine with trading a couple top prospects for that guy. So,
yeah, definitely. I think part of his thing is when he was always a free swinger, and when they went to him and were like, you need to start being more selective and all, it's like, yes, he needed to be more selective, but it's almost like they turned him into a passive hitter, and you just can't have that, unfortunately. Like these guys need to be fully committed, and I'd rather have a guy that swings and misses a little more than a guy that's, like up there thinking, it feels like. And that's almost how it feels watching him. But, he made good swing decisions when he was up at the big league club. I mean, he clearly has a good feel of the zone. And it's a guy that if it clicks, like we were saying, like it's a lot of these guys, like he has the tools that if it ever just clicks, all of a sudden you're looking at a superstar practically caliber talent. So, I'm going to just jump through a couple of quick ones before we hop off, since we ran this pretty long, but that's all good. It was a lot of fun. We always talk about the Giants need speed on the base paths. Why do they keep sending Fitzgerald down? I don't know. Ask Farhan. that's all I can say. I know. he's made a couple base running boo-boos, but you know what? I've watched the veterans make base running mistakes. Matt Chapman and Jorge Soler made them in consecutive innings.
And Ahmed, I think.
And Ahmed.
Was it the day
and
after?
Ahmed later.
At second?
Yes, the next game. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Which, I mean, I get, like, I know somebody got a higher up view of that, and they said it was really more on Matt Williams because Matt Williams threw up a super late stop sign, and that's why VR kind of like hit the brakes late, which I'm sure Ahmed was watching VR, and I mean, it's like, but still, I mean, it still happened. You're still a vet. But I don't know. Like, it's, I agree. Right, you're right here. Fitz should get more playing time. I agree. I'd rather watch Tyler Fitzgerald every day of the week over Nick Ahmed. I'm tired of it. I want the guy that can steal some bags, and he's not like he's got his drawbacks to Tyler Fitzgerald, but he's also hitting like 290 still. Like, and he's 6 or 7 steals on the season. He's like second, I think, behind Chapman.
I mean, my thing with Fitzgerald is, find a way to get him in the lineup, for a couple starts a week. If you got to swap him out with Conforto, who's a little bit older, give him a rest day, against a lefty, kind of like what they were originally, or still doing with Slater, get him comfortable in that role, because it feels like they don't fully trust his bat, even though he's done nothing but rake in Sacramento all year. And I mean, he was very good in the minors last year too. So, get him to relieve Conforto once a week, so then you're not worried about playing him at short. He can play all over the diamond. I mean, with VR up, probably not throw him at first, but with Tyro hurt, maybe throw him at second once a week. It can't hurt you that much. I mean, at the end of the day, we're still seeing Wisely make his occasional mistakes on defense. You see Wilmer do it all the time. There's a handful of guys on the team that are always doing it. Yeah. He's all the speed we need. Just leave Wilmer in there.
First percentile. What's high score mean?
I couldn't believe that. Oh, man.
Any news on Blake Sable? Why sign Casali instead of going Sable? Defense and handling of a pitching staff. That's why. Because, I mean, I like Sable's bat. I do. I wish they would have committed to him playing first base earlier instead of giving him like a couple games and then just throwing him right back at catcher. But that's why they're going with Casali, because the season was kind of hanging from a thread. And, if it goes down the drain, you may see guys like Casali go away, like that's in favor of the young guys. But right now, that's why he's still playing. I'm just going to click through a few of these. We went through this pretty extensively just a little bit ago, so you'll probably just want to back this up a little bit if you want to hear that segment. I'm trying to rip through these. Any predictions on the upcoming road trip? I mean, if I'm being realistic, probably 2 and 4. But hopefully, if they can at least go 3 and 3, I'll feel pretty good. They've got to find a way to get into the All-Star break close to 500, because this bullpen right now is like a ticking time bomb, and they just need to get these arms healthy. They need to get Snell back in there, even though he's not a big innings guy. They need to get Robbie Ray in there, even though he's not going to be a big innings guy, at least this season. They need guys like Tristan Beck coming back, or Harrison getting healthy. They need these reinforcements, because this bullpen, this is unsustainable what they're doing to this pen. So,
yep. All we got to hope for is another solid outing from Birdsong. Hopefully get Harrison back and start getting a little consistency out of the rotation. I always worry about our rotation, though, going from cold weather and SF and then going out to Atlanta in the humid weather. It seems like it kills Webb every time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
like you said, hopefully just tread water, stay around 500, come back home, go on a little roll. That's kind of where I'm at too.
I think Atlanta is gettable. I mean, it is going to be hard going on the road, but no Acuna. Their pitching is not impressive. It's really not. They've been kind of reeling. And if you can carry the good ball you're playing, they might be gettable. Cleveland's gonna be hard in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Just don't get swept. I mean, like that's. I don't like to set the low goal bars, but don't get swept.
Yeah, can't have that because it seems every time they get on a little bit of a roll and they get right around 500 again or right at 500, then it's like another 5-game streak, and they're just trying to keep their head above water. So the schedule does get a lot easier after this, though. They do get some games in against the A's, the Rockies. Honestly, even when we're playing the D-backs and Padres, I don't feel horrible about those games. They keep those close. They just got to play a little bit cleaner baseball is really all it comes down to, and just quit the damn bullpen games.
Yeah. I mean, here's how I look at it. You have this road trip. This is going to be tough. If you can go 3-3 on this road trip, and then you get Toronto, Minnesota at home before the All-Star break, and if you can go 4-2 on that gets you into the All-Star break 1 game under 500. They were 6 games under coming into a homestand against the Cubs and Dodgers with Cleveland and Atlanta staring down the barrel too. And it looked like this team might have been 10 plus games under 500 at the All-Star break. So if you can get to that, you feel like you got a puncher's chance. You're right there. I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if he actually will be. I think Logan Webb's going to end up being their all-star. But I think he deserves to be an all-star, especially with how weak the outfield class is in the NL. For sure.
Man, I really hope both those guys could get in. Anybody else I don't really care about as much, but those 2 guys, and especially Webb, it just seems year after year he gets disrespected by these other coaches and just gets overlooked. I don't know. We watch Webb all the time, and it's like we're really going to choose a 30-year-old Alex Cobb over Logan Webb, who's, Cobb had a nice year last year. I'll give it to him, but Webb's doing it year after year, and that's really what the All-Star game should be about, not a guy having a hot, 2.5, 3 months.
Yeah.
So,
but
Ramos needs to be in there too.
Yeah. And I'll end my kind of day on this where I tweeted it out earlier or yesterday, or it might have been last night. Elliot Ramos was on a 1-for-22 skid coming home. Mm-hmm. And I think he went 9-for-29 or 9-for-28 or something like that on the homestand, and drew 3 or 4 walks in there and only struck out 4 times. His strikeout rate, someone had put it in here, it's at 26.4%. Yep. That's a big improvement on where it was. It was up over 30 for a while. Hopefully he keeps that up because his batted ball stuff is really, really good. So, and I kind of said it where I said you almost needed him to go through a slump because we want to see him adjust and how he reacts to the adversity and if he can come out of it on the other side. And he still hasn't quite made, I think, the full adjustments, but he is, you can tell he is adjusting how they're throwing. I'd still like to see him absolutely crush an inside fastball one of these days and sit on it because they are pitching him hard in. And he hasn't. I think that's going to be how he gets kind of pitches back in his happy zone a little bit, is if he starts hitting a few of those. But we'll see. That's my Ramos tangent. That's going to be how I kind of end it. I'll kick it to you if you have anything you want to throw out there before we call it.
I did just see Maui Ahuna hit a homer in San Jose tonight. So right after we got done talking about him, he goes and hits one. So
always goes, man.
That was cool to see. But I really hope Webb and Ramos both get in. Have a feeling with the Giants record, if it kind of stays around what it is, we probably only get one of them by default. But man, that's tough between those two. They both really deserve it. I mean, like you said,
pick Webb just because he's done his time.
Yeah, Ramos is still only, I think, 24 or so. But I mean, he's statistically, one of the best outfielders in the NL right now, even though it's not a great pool. But so
I mean, for those that like the WAR stat, I want to say he's at like, let's see, 2.4. Okay. I mean, it's gone down a little bit because he was cold for a little while, but
Yeah.
you know, he's among the leaders. He might be the leader on outfielders. So, yeah, I mean, it's a player to be very excited about, especially if he keeps doing what he's doing. But I think we're gonna call it there. I mean, I have never gone this long on my own channel, and I'm sure I saw someone say more of these 3-hour shows or whatever. I can't say that's gonna happen all that often. I typically have a kid at home. She is out of town right now. My wife and daughter are out of town, so I have the ability to do this right now without upsetting people. So. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I appreciate Ricky jumping on here.
Yeah.
Everybody, if you're not already, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We're at like 550. Get to have more fun with some of this stuff. Yeah, Dan, Dan is rubbing off on me. Yeah, they go a little long sometimes, and that's all right. It's good baseball talk. This was a lot of fun. I had a feeling it was going to be a long one because I knew we were going over a lot of material.
Yeah.
So it's a ton of fun. Ricky, you are welcome anytime, man. Yeah, I think Dan and I are always like, if anybody wants to join, hop in. Thursday or Friday. So
yeah, no, I'm definitely down to get on with you guys on a Thursday or Friday, as long as it's not going too late. But
yeah, normally we keep it to an hour-ish,
No, tonight was fun. I'm off tonight, so made it easy. But I mean, yeah, if you want to keep doing it on Mondays, I'm free most of the time.
Sure.
So
yeah, for sure. All right, yeah, I'll we'll try and figure that out. Yeah, we'll either do Mondays or Tuesdays or something like that. We'll figure out.
Yeah, either one.
Try and work something out with that, and the future ones might be a little quicker pace where we're just like, all right, here's what guys did. We'll talk about a few what we're seeing, but yeah, and we'll kick it over to base. We'll probably shoot through the minor league guys, but this was cool because I wanted to let everyone kind of get soak in your knowledge on this system too, because you bring a lot to it. You bring a lot to the table on what you know about the Giants farm. So cool. All right, everyone. We will catch you guys all on the next one. I don't know if it's going to be – I'm probably going to be on NorCal on Wednesday night with Dan and Eric, although I think Dan's in the Philippines. I have no clue how that's going to shake out, but I'll probably be on with them Wednesday night. Apparently, it's like noon where he is when they jump on at like 10 or 9 o'clock or whatever, but I don't know. Or 8:30. It's
going to be all pixelated.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll see how it goes. He's going to be like snorkeling while he's doing it, But yeah, I'll be on with those guys. Dan and I, other Dan, him and I will be on either, what are we going to call him, Caveman Dan? I mean, they were going fake fan Dan. Now he's in the cave. We'll see if he catches that comment, if he's still watching. But we'll hop on with Dan and I will be on either. I don't know if it'll be Thursday or Friday night. I'll just have to see what he's doing. But I'll get something scheduled in there. But all right, guys. Take it easy. Go Giants. And yeah, that's all I got.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.